Shalom Aleichem Malachei Ashoreis Malachei Elyon Mimelech Malachei HaMelochim HaKadosh Baruch Boyachem l'sholoi Malachei Asholoi Malachei Elyon Mimelech.
Good evening. Welcome to another session of Jewish Philosophy Forum. Let's talk for a moment about the importance of modesty. Now, modesty is misunderstood and is thought to be a precautionary law that is to prevent us from sinning. That's the conventional wisdom. That we are modest because we want to prevent sin. Now that may be true on some level, but it certainly is not the whole story, is not the true meaning of modesty. Sin cannot be prevented by adding a law. In fact, laws are made only for people who don't want to sin. People who want to sin will not be discouraged by a law because sinning means to break a law. In fact, if we had no laws, nobody could sin. So giving a law does not stop people from sinning. Laws are given only for people who don't want to sin, who want to know right from wrong because they want to do what's right. And so the law tells them what is right so that they know where to find the morality, the goodness, the right things. But if people want to sin, no amount of modesty is going to prevent it. Also, modesty is presented in Torah as a virtue unto itself, much more than a means, a tool, by which we prevent immoral things from happening. What is the virtue of modesty? The human being is capable of many sensitive and really delicate virtues. One of them is called intimacy. Intimacy is a very delicate and sensitive talent that God gave us that only human beings have. Angels have no concept of intimacy, which is why God did not give angels the commandments of the Torah. Because the Torah is an intimate expression of God's needs or will or preferences, likes and dislikes. And who could appreciate an expression of intimate self, of intimate wants and needs? Only the human being. Only a being who also has a sense of intimacy, of their own sense of intimacy. And that's why two human beings, both gifted with an ability, with a capacity for intimacy, can share intimacy, can be intimate together. But there's a mystery here, an important mystery. And that is that by definition, intimacy is an unshareable thing. What is intimate about me or to me is the part of me that I cannot share. Not that I choose not to share, but what I cannot share. There are things that I keep secret because I choose to. I don't want to share it. I'm selfish. I want it for myself. I keep it for myself. I don't share it. The fact that I have to choose, the fact that it's my decision not to share it, means that it is essentially shareable. It's detachable. I can separate it from myself and give it to you, and you can take it home. But I choose not to. That's not true intimate. The true intimate is that part of me that I cannot share even if I did want to. The part of me that can't be separated from me. It is essential and therefore not shareable. It's that part of a person, that intimate aspect of a person, that is so appealing and so attractive to others. The unshareable part. But then again, if it's unshareable, then what does it mean to share an intimacy? So it seems that we have here an impossible situation. If what I'm offering is not an essential part of me, an inseparable part of me, an unshareable part of me, then I'm not being intimate. But then again, to share it, to be intimate with someone else, is a contradiction to the definition of what is intimate. So it would seem at first glance that if I were to share that which is truly intimate, that which is truly me, if I could share it at all, I could do it only once. Because after the first time, once it's been shared, it is no longer intimate. It is no longer exclusively me. It now is ours. It now belongs to more than me. So it's no longer intimate. And by the way, there's no such thing as partly intimate. That's totally meaningless. And there's no such thing as semi-private. Only the hospital who wants to charge you more for a room invented this notion of semi-private. Because semi-private means quite public. Either it's private or it's not private. Semi-private is nonsense. So partially intimate means absolutely nothing. It's like saying 99% reliable. If I need to rely on something and it's 99% reliable, then I can't rely on it. So if it's a partial intimacy, then it's not intimate at all. If it's something I could share, then it is not the true intimate part of myself. So what does it mean, the ability to be intimate with another person? In essence, being part of another person's intimate life is a violation. For one person to enter another person's intimate space is a violation, because intimate means exclusive, off-limits, sacred, inviolate. So to be part of someone else's intimate life or intimate space is to trespass and violate that intimacy. As in the Beis Hamikdash, no one entered the Holy of Holies because it was trespass. This was a sacred space, a private space, an intimate space. To enter there would be to violate the space, would be to trespass. So we have here a very unique situation. There is a part of me that is truly intimate. I cannot give it away. I cannot share it. I cannot make it public. And yet, when I do share it, when I invite someone into the intimate part of my existence, whether it's emotional, physical, mental, the excitement, the pleasure that that gives is radically different, radically greater than any other pleasure in life. But that's if the intimacy is not compromised or violated. It's interesting that in human nature, sexuality and violence are so closely related. Wherever one exists, the other comes along. What is this relationship? Why are they so closely related? It's because, by its very nature, a human being's intimate space, a human being's sexuality, is a sacred space, and any trespass is a violation, is violence. How then do two human beings share intimacy and not violate the sacredness or the intimateness of their intimacy? That's why God created marriage, invented marriage, in which two human beings can be fully conscious, fully aware of the sacredness of each other's intimate space, so that when they share an intimacy, they are keenly aware that what they are doing is really not available to them. It's like when you visit someone's home and you know that this home will never be yours. You can never acquire in any way and in any measure ownership or rights, privileges to this home. It's not yours. And it will never be. It's a sacred space. How do we handle a sacred space? How do we treat sanctity? If you think about the first time you went to Jerusalem, and you went to the wall, and maybe you had anticipated this moment for a long time. Maybe you've been planning this for a long time. And now finally you're standing right next to this sacred wall. And you're not sure, what do you do now? How do you behave? How do you treat something that is sacred? And so you're thinking, can I touch the wall? Am I allowed to touch? The wall is sacred. I'm not. The wall is holy. I'm not. May I touch the wall? Dare I touch the wall? And you kind of hesitate. On the other hand, you've come all this way, you've been looking forward, you've been waiting for the moment. How can you not approach the wall and make some contact? And so you have this mixed feeling. You want to get closer, you want to make contact, you want to touch those stones, and on the other hand, how could you? How dare you? Can you really? May you do this? But you see everybody else doing it. Everybody runs over to the wall, people kiss the stone, and finally you go ahead and you do it too. You touch the stone or you kiss it, and you feel two very distinct feelings. One is the pleasure, the closeness, the connectedness, the pleasure in making contact. And at the same time, and to the same degree, you feel that you can't do this. You can't be touching those stones. You can't be kissing those stones. They are sacred. And so you come away with a very intense experience. And what's most meaningful about it is that if you come back next year or a month later, you will experience that same excitement again. It's still sacred. And you again go through that whole process of, dare I touch it? Can I touch it? May I? That's experiencing the sacred. When you start getting so comfortable and so familiar with the stones, with the wall, with the place, that you no longer hesitate. You no longer ask, may I, can I, dare I do this? Then you've lost sight of the sanctity. You've become callous or familiar. And in this case, familiarity is not welcome, not appropriate, not beneficial, not helpful at all. On the contrary, here is where it breeds contempt. In sanctity, familiarity does not belong. So where there is something sacred, we avoid familiarity to the ultimate degree, to the extreme. Even a touch of familiarity is a violation, is violence, if it's applied to the sacred or to the intimate. That's what modesty means. Modesty means maintain an awe, maintain a respect, maintain that hesitation, that awareness that when it comes to something sacred, we never have rights. We never acquire ownership. We never get familiar. And the same is true with human relationships. In a marriage, the magic, the holiness of it, the sanctity of it, is what permits the intimate to remain intimate year after year. That no matter how often a husband and wife are intimate, there is always that awareness, and hopefully a keen awareness. I'm out of my league. I'm out of my depth. I can't be here. I don't belong here. This is not mine. This is not shareable. This is not acquirable. This is intimate and sacred to the other person. And therefore, there is a pleasure unlike any other, and there's an awe unlike any other. And that combination is what is known as human sexuality. But when we lose that, when we become familiar, when we start to feel privileged, entitled, when we start to own the other person's intimacy or the other person's sexuality, even if it's by consent, we are destroying the sacred. We are losing the intimate. It's becoming something less than human sexuality. Now we are violating. Now it's become violence. So the thin line that separates intimacy from violence is that feeling, that touch of familiarity. There cannot be a familiarity with that which is sacred. Modesty means we behave in a way that shows respect and awe for the nature of human intimacy, and that is that it is sacred. To put this in very simple terms, modern society, the mass media, contemporary thinking is that if we could all relax, if we could all become more familiar, more at home with our own sexuality, intimacy, then our relationships would improve. We would be better off. And so all the messages about human sexuality that we've been bombarded with for the last 50 years have all had the same point, the same message. Sexuality is natural Being intimate with each other is natural. That's what happens between men and women. All we need to do is relax, enjoy. It's there for the taking. It's there for the sharing. Why are we so uptight? Why are we so concerned? Why are we so uncomfortable? The message is, it's natural. It's what we do. So enjoy it. Relax and enjoy it. Get familiar. The traditional message, not only in Torah but in all ancient traditions, the traditional message has always been that sexuality involving two people, involving a man and a woman, is not natural. It's not available. It's not familiar. It's something we don't do. Not because of religion, not because of laws, not because of commandments, but because of the nature of the beast. Intimacy is something that is not shareable. That which is sacred cannot belong to two people. It can only belong to one. So true intimacy is not shareable by its very nature, not by law, not by religious dictate, but by its nature. And so naturally speaking, this is not something we do. We don't do this. We are not familiar with this. This is not something that naturally happens. On the contrary, another person's intimate space, another person's sacred space, is a place we don't go, is a place we can't go, is a thing we cannot share, we cannot own, and we may not get familiar. A group of teenagers were planning to go on a hiking trip, camping trip. And because of their newly discovered interest in mitzvahs and in Judaism, they wanted to bring along kosher food. They had gone on this trip many times. This time they wanted it to be kosher. So they consulted me. They came and asked me how they can make it kosher. When I asked them who was going, and they told me that it was 8 teenagers, 4 boys and 4 girls, around the ages of 16, 17, or 18, that they would be going for a week up to the northern border, to the boundary waters. They would be living in tents and away from civilization. I said, you know, the whole thing is not kosher. And I wasn't referring to the food. And they were offended. They said, you know, we've done this many times. No one ever misbehaves. Nothing ever happens. It's really innocent. We're old friends from way back. Families are friends. We've gone camping. We've done everything together. Nothing ever happens. In fact, one of the boys said, last year when we went camping, one of the sleeping bags caught fire and was destroyed, so we shared a sleeping bag, and nothing happened. He was quite proud of himself. So I said, well, in that case, you don't really need to speak to a rabbi. You need to see a psychiatrist. Why are you proud? What are you proud of? To be able to share a sleeping bag and nothing happens? Is this a virtue? Is this a sign of holiness? Is this a sign of piety? It's a tragedy. It shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be possible to share a sleeping bag and nothing happens. Not only because it's unhealthy, not only that you might end up needing a psychiatrist for real, it's not the Torah's ideal Torah's ideal in giving us the laws of modesty that says you don't share a sleeping bag is not because we're afraid of what might happen, but precisely because we're afraid of what might not happen. When you become familiar with that which should be intimate, and it loses its intimacy, then you have violated something. You've destroyed something. Something valuable. Something that Torah does not want destroyed. So the modesty that the Torah teaches us is not to prevent sin. It's not to prevent misbehavior. It's in fact there to preserve the intimacy, to make it possible to share a sacred experience without compromising the sanctity. The ability to go to a place of holiness without diminishing the holiness. The ability to touch the holy stones without becoming familiar, without losing the sense of awe, without compromising, so that when you come back the next time, it is just as exciting, just as sacred, just as holy, just as intimate as before. So modesty means avoid familiarity. Don't get comfortable. You can't be comfortable. You're out of your league. Here, the appropriate response, the appropriate feeling, the appropriate sense is one of awe, as it was the first time, as it should be every time. We're not very familiar with sanctity in our lives. We don't have the sanctity of the synagogue the way we used to. We don't appreciate the sanctity of holy books. We don't appreciate the sanctity of a holy man or woman. We don't appreciate the sanctity of the seventh day of the week. So we're not surrounded with sanctity as our grandparents were in the shtetl. But we're discovering the hard way, from life itself, that there is a sanctity in the bedroom. There's a sanctity to another person's intimacy and sexuality that will not be violated, cannot be violated without destroying us. Having discovered that, we are rediscovering sanctity, rediscovering the things that we may not be familiar with, and that enriches our lives.